Imagine a world without Woody, Buzz Lightyear, Rex and the rest of the gang. We don't want to. Pixar's Toy Story, the world's first fully computer-animated feature film, is a landmark cinematic classic and a watershed moment for not only the studio, but for the shape of the animation medium as a whole. As debut features go, Toy Story is a remarkable triumph for a studio that went from experimenting with computer graphics at Lucasfilm and making Listerine and Tropicana commercials on the side to becoming one of the most revered animation studios today. However, for as effortless as the final products appeared to be on the screen, the productions of Toy Story and its 1999 sequel Toy Story 2 illustrated how vulnerable and edging on complete failure the fledgling studio was at the time. The original Toy Story, released in 1995, was born out of a tenuous relationship with the upstart computer programmers at Pixar and the corporate studio bigwigs at Disney. After helping Disney develop the CAPS digital art assembly program, which was used on 90s hand-drawn classics like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King, Pixar was granted the chance to make a full-length feature under Disney's dime. Disney animation in the 80s and 90s had undergone a major revitalization of leadership with the arrival of outsider help far more experienced in Hollywood as an industry than the company had in a long time. Figures like Michael Eisner, Thomas Schumacher, and Peter Schneider brought Disney out of its dark ages by catapulting it into the modern era with an eye for contemporary entertainment and market savvy. Not to be forgotten is one of the more polarizing figures of Disney's animation renaissance, Jeffrey Katzenberg. During his latter years with the studio, chairman of Disney Animation at the time, Katzenberg was well known internally for pushing the traditionally trained and humble artists to hit for general Hollywood audience appeal, a trait that would follow through in his founding of DreamWorks Animation and films like Shrek and Shark Tale. Katzenberg had a history of butting heads with Disney creatives as his eyes locked on commercial industry success over artistic intent, while at the same time creating an environment that enabled the Disney artists to produce some of their best work in decades. With a production as characteristically experimental as Toy Story happening under his watch, Katzenberg had some suggestions. When it came to Toy Story, Katzenberg wanted the still novice Pixar to push for edge. Director John Lasseter and company had already set on making something different from the Disney fairy tale standard, but Katzenberg pressured them to imbue Toy Story with cynical, insult humor brimming with innuendo and snark. In short, he wanted Toy Story to be for adults. This executive meddling resulted in what came to be known as the production's Black Friday. The film's first completed story reel, which outlined the entire script in scratch dialogue tracks and storyboards, was screened for studio heads. In this original form, Toy Story was an overly long, unpleasant and unfunny experience, sourced largely by Tom Hanks' portrayal of Woody as an unlikable control freak. The initial reel's miserable reception caused doubts among executives and forced Disney to pause the entire production indefinitely, with threats of massive layoffs and the very existence of Pixar debut film hanging in the balance. Given only 2 weeks and with everything to lose, Lasseter and his key story creatives, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, and Joe Ranft, reshaped the original reel into the film they wanted to make all along. Woody's character was made more identifiable, the story streamlined, and the trademark Pixar personality powered, though without a forced executive agenda, culminating in the finished film we know today as Toy Story. After the revolutionary success of Toy Story and Pixar's modest second film, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2 was originally envisioned to be a home video release in the same league as The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride and other straight-to-video Disney sequels. The sequel's development was no easier than the original, as story issues and technological issues compelled Pixar to ask Disney to delay its Thanksgiving 1999 release, which Disney had not only declined, but felt the progress Pixar made on the film was good enough to promote the film to a theatrical debut. In a scramble to turn the entire production around, Lasseter, immediately after finishing A Bug's Life, was asked to take over directing duties for the sequel, and over the course of the weekend, restructured the entire film's story and put animation production basically back to square one. The film had to be completed in rushed crunch time that put a massive strain on the entire crew. Animators had to work against the clock to complete a process that typically takes years, in order to meet an uncompromising deadline of only a few months. While most animated films take up to 5 years to reach completion, Toy Story 2 had to be repitched and fully animated in a matter of only 9 months. On top of the Herculean task of finishing the film on time, perhaps the most famous Pixar blunder happened during the already hectic production, even ahead of the creative overhaul. After a keyboard command was run on one of Pixar's computers, the already strained servers began to hastily delete all the film's assets and sequences within only a few minutes, nearly destroying all the months of work put into the film. Technical director Galen Sussman, who was working partly at home with her newborn baby, thankfully had backups of all the film's data saved on her home computer, which was promptly escorted to the studio and uploaded to the studio's servers. Animated films are a highly collaborative endeavor built on passion and creativity, but what cannot be understated is how much hard work, compromise and experimentation is put into them. Pixar knows this more than any other major studio, as each of their films, especially the early ones like the first 2 Toy Story films, were met with immense pressure and second-guessing from their higher-ups as they were finding their footing as filmmakers. While Toy Story is one of the most beloved and successful animated franchises of all time, there was a lot riding on it, as it defined the studio's ingenuity and identity against near impossible odds.